left.
Oh. Well, now he's gonna... Oh.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Give me just a sec. Can you scoot over?
All right. Is that better?
I think so.
Okay.
Gotta get the feng shui just right. Oh, good. James is here now. We can start. Yep. All right. Greetings, everybody. Everybody having a good Printopia so far? I think I'm just starting to get the hang of calling it Printopia. I still want to call it ERF. Yeah. But I'm glad to see some familiar faces, some new faces.
Yeah.
For those who haven't met us before, I go by Pooch. My name is Alan Puccinell. I own a small company called Repkord. I work for Prusa 3D Printing. And with me today,
I'm Andrew Mayhall. Maybe you probably know of Gloop. I'm one of the co-founders. We make that sticky science sauce to glue your prints together.
yeah, and a couple years ago now,
it's been a few years.
It's been a hot minute. We started doing a I guess it wasn't a podcast originally. It started as like these cathartic phone calls between two frazzled small business owners. And, you know, we would kind of
share ideas frustrations,
and vent and all this stuff. And
lots of venting.
It was like, this is interesting. I think maybe people would like to listen to this. And so I think we originally started on like when Twitter was doing that. What was that thing they were doing for?
Spaces,
They
right?
still kind of do. Is Twitter Spaces still happening? Are people listening to that anymore? I don't know. But yeah, you could have engaged people. You could do like kind of an audio only thing. So we started there.
There was a chat too, I think, as well.
There was a chat element and whatnot. And then we said, you know what, let's like up our game.
Yeah.
And then it really hasn't upped any since then.
I was going to say, we made it to YouTube, and then we'd like put a little bit of flair into it, and then
took a lot of flair away.
Yeah.
As I travel a lot more. So we're kind of inconsistent with it. But we kind of have a tradition at this point. When we come and talk, we'll do like a live chat. And I think today, I like the fireside feel to what we do, because the theme has always been like how to make money in 3D printing, which can mean anything these days.
Literally anything, yeah.
Yeah. So we like to start with, you know, my background has always been in the accessories and stuff. Like I could never do what Prusa does, or some of these amazing companies that are doing like variants on Voron or whatever. Like making a printer is just so intensive in terms of like the labor and the support and all that stuff. But I always love things that are like Levi Strauss model. I say like selling the picks and the shovels to the gold miners. Don't try to mine the gold yourself. Because
it's a really hard thing to do, and you got to get really lucky.
Yeah, and I think you're somewhat like-minded too, and like you're like, how do I find a niche in something, right?
Exactly.
So tell people really quick the early origins of the idea for Gloop.
Well, I mean, you know, as we were just talking about, making money in 3D printing can literally happen from anywhere, and you know, for us specifically, it was back in 2018, PEI build platforms were just starting to come around, and a lot of people were having problems. How do you get your stuff stuck to the bed? How do you like build something larger? And I was like, well, there's something maybe here. Maybe we can make something for this. And I kind of defined essentially what would be a niche, and said, well, maybe I kind of experiment and see if we can come up with a product or a solution, something that I would want, and then see if other people would want it. And then kind of the rest was history, right?
Yeah. So that's a little bit about us. Just one of the things I like to do at these things is just get a sense of you guys. How many of you out there would say you have a business that you're running right now, or let's just say you already have a business? So we're looking at a handful. Okay.
Awesome.
How many of you guys are interested in maybe starting a business? You're kind of noodling the idea. Anybody? Maybe this guy?
Oh yeah.
You don't have enough jobs, Andrew. Why not? Right? Why not? Okay, great. So we talk a lot on the podcast about the challenge for makers in particular, probably a lot of people though, is we come into it as a hobby, it's something we're passionate about, and then we come to a show like this and we show off our things, And we get all this great feedback. Everybody's like, "This is amazing. I want to buy this from you," right? And you're like, "Oh, what? Like, should I be selling these things?" And sometimes, guys, the answer is no, right?
Yes.
And that's okay. So, like, we're part of the. Let's be real about it. If you are happy and passionate, it's bringing you joy and stuff like that. A lot of what starting a business will do is suck that joy away sometimes.
A lot, yes.
Right?
I mean, being an entrepreneur in itself is a difficult job, and you will be faced with tons of challenges. So, be mindful of that when you're trying to go out on your endeavors.
Yeah. So I think a lot of what we do is kind of like going back and forth. And I would say that my idea of like how I want to do things has absolutely evolved over the years. Like you may try something. I mean, the beautiful part about being a maker a lot of times is like we can try something and then we can pivot to something else.
Oh yeah.
And that's all.
Well, that's the beauty of 3D printing, right? It could be anything.
That's why it's a fantastic tool set for this. And I think part of the reason that we have such a robust community is like unlike any other tool. You can pivot very easily. We can do continual improvement very easily.
Well, that's something you leverage a lot in your products, is the continual improvement. Yeah.
I try. And it's just something that like Prusa leverages a lot, and a lot of people like, yes, we're well aware of injection molding. We're well aware of other ways to go about doing it. But we like the fact that we can not necessarily be committed to doing it one way all the time. And I think that's a really important thing to be honest about and do. So of you guys that have been doing it, like, did you start with one idea? I'm gonna call you out, Thomas. Did you start with one idea and then say, I'm not really interested in that, try? Yeah.
I'd say it's definitely along with what you were saying about being rapid prototype. You try something and then you are like, all right, these are the parts that work. I'm going to pivot a little bit. These are the parts I'm going to keep. These are the things that work, like, that are going to be core to the business. And maybe I'll flesh out something else around it.
It's a continual learning process. A lot. You use the word pivot. We throw that around like, and I think that feels scary to a lot of people because a pivot suggests that like maybe I was wrong or I did something incorrect in the first place. But it's actually something that I would say you should really lean into. It's one of the strengths that we actually have.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, I like to view it as this idea of becoming a craftsman. This craftsman mindset. We're all kind of familiar with woodworking, and hopefully, and like we can see this master woodworker perfecting his craft over years. But we can actually apply that same principle to entrepreneurship in itself, and that is really embracing that pivot. So that craftsman, he's constantly trying new things, and he'll identify something that isn't working, and he'll keep working at it until he gets it right. So same thing in entrepreneurship, and that's the power of that pivot. Is like, hey, this isn't working. Maybe I try something else.
Yeah. So don't be afraid of that. I think that's good. Today, one of the things I'd like to dive in a little bit more and maybe interact with you guys a little bit on is idea generation, like for your business, and thinking about what works and what doesn't work. I think one of the I don't want to say it's a mistake, but like one of the things that a lot of people start with is they buy a 3D printer and they're like, how am I going to pay for this thing, right? And they're like, maybe I can print a bunch of doodads and then that's going to help me offset the cost of this.
Craft fair.
And you kind of start down this road of like putting the cart before the horse.
Exactly.
And whether it's a 3D printer or any other tool set, I think that's kind of a approach that people stumble into. And I would say that kind of puts you in a mindset that isn't what I have found to be optimal. Maybe you disagree, but we talk a lot about spending the time to like actually flesh out a plan. And we're lucky that we are part of a greater community where there are so many little sub-hobbies and use cases of the 3D printing tool set inside.
Oh yeah.
And some of the most successful ventures that I've seen are the ones that are really like drilling in on a community and finding a good application, and of which there are many. Whether it's custom car modding, if you're into a specific sport, providing like, bracing or so. I like the idea of actually like thinking about who is the community I'm tailoring to, what am I providing, and how does that potentially service other industry?
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things, 3D Gloop is not my first company. And one of the things that I learned from a failure from my first company is taking the time to sit down and actually plan through things a little bit. Think through exactly what it is that I want to do, where I want to be, and how I'm going to turn something into a business. And, as kind of Pooch was talking about, is basically take some time, think to yourself, like, is there something that I can do and apply my knowledge, my skill set into a specific area? And really think through all of the ins and outs of that. Because if you just dive in, you might have some success, but eventually when problems arise, because they will arise, how do you go about solving them? Most of the time, first-time entrepreneurs or just, young, business owners, they're going to get in there and they're like, well, I don't know how to solve this problem. And then they're just going to start throwing a bunch of things at the wall and find out that it's a lot harder than, you thought it was.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I would say, I don't know if it's been documented or not yet, but it feels like there is a statistically significant higher amount of ADHD in our community.
Maybe just a little bit.
Like a little bit. Which is just inherent, I think, in who we are. It's like we at the end of the day, the thing we hear over and over and over again is, I just want to make cool stuff. Like, we just want to make cool stuff, and if it can support a living in a way to do that, I'm the same way. I wish that I could spend way more time being creative and iterating and all that stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of those things are kind of incompatible.
Very incompatible.
Setting a long, right, like we say, like making 1 in 10,000 of something are very different propositions.
Very.
So you may get interest and may want to like build up something but realize really quickly like, wow, I'm becoming a project manager. I'm not actually getting to do any of the things that I'm loving, right? So a lot of it is being honest about like, what is the job gonna look like? Like, play ahead, like what does success look like when we're selling 20,000 of these things a year? Or maybe you're not, maybe you're doing a custom thing. I mean, there's any number of, maybe you're doing a software thing. I know, Andrew, like that's the other thing I would challenge you to think. It doesn't mean, because we like 3D printing, it doesn't mean you have to make a widget and sell it. How many of you guys have seen all the articulated dragons and stuff that are starting to show up at like craft fairs and in gas stations? I've seen them everywhere, coffee shops.
Literally everywhere,
and I'm not slamming on it. Does anybody do that as a job? Okay, I'm not slamming it. I'm really not. I think that that's a phenomenal way to start to build a brand, get things out there. I say do the repetitions, right? Like, figure out what works. You probably have printed some and you realize like, these don't sell well, or they're too much work to be worth it. Like, is the juice worth the squeeze? We don't actually stop to ask ourselves, wait a minute, what is this carousel I've gotten onto, and is this the carousel I want to be on? Are you, how long have you been doing it? Are you happy? You've been doing it since the beginning of the year? Sorry, if I come out, I just want to hear better. Yeah, okay. I love that. Thank you.
If I can get my business name out to my local area where they know that I can do 3D printing, and I talk to them at the craft fairs, and they know, well, if I need this part, she 3D prints, I can go to her. So I'm right now, I'm just trying to use it as a marketing strategy, really, to get my business out there so that eventually the orders will come to me and I can just sit back and...
I absolutely love that. I think that is a fantastic strategy. We talk about doing the reps, doing the cycles and all that stuff, and honestly, that is a big part of like any business. It's like, just start, and it's okay to like switch and pivot and add new things. And you might decide after doing this for like, it's a lot of work. You're doing a lot of printing, you're traveling to a lot of these fairs and stuff like that. But the more, what I really love about that is the more that people can see you and your business and that they're supporting something tangible, that really resonates with me. I'm sure, now do you also like sell them to other places that will leave them or display them in their store?
Not yet, I'm working on it, but yeah. Like
So they're always with you?
Yeah.
When you're,
Right now, I have a small website that, I hand out business cards everywhere so people can go. And
Awesome.
But right now, the dragons and the flexies are kind of my marketing strategy to get me
Yeah.
out to a wider audience.
I think that's great. I bring it up because I think it feels like low-hanging fruit to a lot of people, right? We have these great tools and materials and machines that can produce these things, but obviously the easier and the more available something is, the more competition there's going to be out there, right? So we have to keep that in mind, and what works for you now and where you may go. So I don't know if you've spent the time to think about what's success look like, 2 or 3 years from now, and where do you want to be, that was rhetorical, but yeah. So I think that's a fantastic starting point, and not everything has to be in the name of like, I made this widget because I need to make money to sell. Like in fact, I would argue when you're first getting started, you should be investing more in building a brand and a reputation and in getting involved in the community. I think that has been the one thing that I would say I have benefited from being part of this and interacting with these people and building a network and all that stuff. Really important stuff. We talk about this
so many
going to
times.
events and meeting people and knowing faces and helping each other.
Well, I mean, like when you're getting started, you're starting fresh. Even if you've done something before and you have that experience, you have, nothing to say, hey, this is what I've been building, look at all of this stuff. While you can really try and like, as an entrepreneur, focus on, well, I got to make every sale in order to make the money. Here at Gloop, we were bootstrapped. So that's taking all of the funds that we're generating from our sales, reinvesting into the company and building it up, not taking any outside money. And yeah, we were really concerned about how much product we were able to sell, how much, volume we could produce so that we can reach higher and higher economies of scale. But in many times we had to, kind of push all of that away and say, that doesn't really matter. Even if we're not turning a profit, as long as we're, continuing to focus on the right things, those long-term branding pieces, being a recognized name, putting effort into, building a quality product, not trying to focus on cutting costs, all of those other things, it helps build up that brand and eventually that recognition, and then you can start cashing in essentially on that brand recognition and building new products, branching out, expanding, your overall market.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think one of the traps that we oftentimes fall into as makers, because we just want to make cool stuff, is that we go wide way before we go deep, right? And by that I mean, I want to put this, and then, I also want to add this and this, and that, because we get caught in our idea, and that is a really, I've fallen into this trap multiple times. I think I've seen you want to offer all these different formulations for very niche things, but as a business, you need to be like, actually, like, we need to keep that cash flow going, and it is a lot of work. It is very labor intensive to add new SKUs and add. So if maybe you have 10 prints, or I don't know how many, 20, there's a number of prints that you have. And you probably realize that every new version of that, and there's tons of people that are going to be like, I really want this one, and I really want that, and you start to fall into this trap. I need it in this color. We talk about custom. There are plenty of successful businesses out there that have made a business out of doing custom stuff, and that feels like an appealing path for 3D printing as well, right? Because we don't have to tool up. Like if I just need to add a name to something or whatever, that seems great. The problem is we don't value our time enough.
Exactly.
And we realize that every time that I have to go on and update that model to have a new name on it or whatever, that is labor intensive.
The changes in workflow for a custom piece.
That is another piece I have to print. That is another material that I have to have. And so this is why we start hearing the Jobsian thing of like the saying no is actually like the key a lot of the time. Like, and you're going to find on a daily basis, if you do this regularly, like, no, like I'm not doing that because I know where that's going to go. Right?
It's been 5 years since we've launched a new product at Gloop. Our last product that we launched was our PETG formula, and I've wanted to branch out into so many different formulas. You wouldn't believe the number of questions we get for TPU or for nylons, for all these other filaments. And while I would love to go and explore those, I right now have to continue to say no, even though we've reached levels that I never even imagined reaching for economies of scale. It's one of those things where even though we know that we could probably make money, it's such a disruption for the size of our team and the direction that we're going.
So the place I like to take that is it's not the benefit. The beauty of this is it's not no. Oftentimes it's just a not right
yet.
now.
Yeah.
And if you take the time to plan and you go like, and you reward yourself with like, we can take this on when I have this many employees to help me with that, or this many machines, or we achieve this sales goal so that we have the cash to like, that is how you get to sustainable growth. But again, as makers, we're not always thinking about sustainable, we're thinking about what's in front of us right now.
Yeah. Well, we get distracted by that shiny object, and that's another thing we always talk about.
Shiny object syndrome.
You know, as makers, again.
And there are many shiny objects in this.
So many, and we come to these shows and we get to see all of these amazing things that, you know, these creative people can come up with, and it's inspiring, and it makes us want to go back and do other things. You know, but in many cases, we should take time and reflect on that and say, well, hey, you know, this is awesome. How can I actually help that person? Is there something that I can do potentially, you know, that might help that person, but also help my business? You know, and like that's what's really unique, like for our products, and I think your products as well. You know, what we found is like this resonance, like, hey, we can build these products to help other people build these really awesome things, and you know, it builds up our business, but it also builds up or enables other people to build businesses. There's several companies now that we are working with that they make vacuum cleaner attachments or tool components, and they're all 3D printed, but they need some way of fastening things together, and like your product works and it helps us do this, and it's enabled us to build, you know, our business, and it's incredibly rewarding. So, you know, if you can try and think through, you know, on your ideas, like how could you help other people build their businesses, what you'll probably find is it'll help you build your own.
Yeah, I think the two key takeaways, if you take nothing else away from this, is not try to do it all your own. So community and networking and all that stuff, and thinking about how am I helping other people, but specifically to tie it back to the Levi Strauss model, or a B2B, business-to-business model, just like you guys are trying to be like, how do I justify the purchase of this printer? It's a lot easier for you to justify the purchase of something if it's in support of you making more money. It's the same thing for people that you're selling to. So if you come up with a product or an idea that is enabling somebody to make their life better, that is where the big wins, I think, really start to happen.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Like, there's, I think that's an easier said than done thing too,
It
right?
is.
Because
It
we're
is.
like, oh, you know, it's
you
just
know,
create a product.
I mean, to kind of circle back on it though, you know, you don't be afraid of trying and failing. You know, in entrepreneurship, like, you know, there's this saying like fail fast, fail early, and fail often. You know, because failure is how you're learning. You will learn things from success. But in many cases, you will learn so much more and you will gain so much deeper insight as to this didn't work. And if you sit there and take it apart, you can kind of understand maybe this is why it didn't work, and maybe it will lead you to the correct path. You know, so I think in moving forward for your business, just try things. You know, don't be afraid of failure, and it's okay. You know.
Yeah, I think that's enough of us talking at you. We've got like 6 minutes left, so do you guys want to do a little like Q&A? Are there questions out there? If there's things you want to ask us, and it's totally fine if you don't, but yeah, Brian, do you mind, Mike, Mixmaster Mike guy? I don't know what your name is, but thank you.
Yeah, I constantly battle, you know, 3D printing started as a hobby, and it's moved into something where I can potentially occasionally make money, but I have a full-time job, and that work-life balance is tough. So I wonder if you guys have any insights as to like 3D Gloop. You're obviously doing that full-time now. Maybe it started out as something you were interested in. What's that? Is there an inflection point? Do you think it's sustainable for people to keep stuff like this as a side hustle going on, or?
So I'm sure there's probably going to be some, you know, differing opinions here. I went all in. And I view entrepreneurship as a, you know, an ultimatum sort of thing. If you're not willing to risk everything and, you know, basically, try your luck at this, like you're going to find that it's really hard to sort of step in. Now, I've seen plenty of people slowly step into that process, but for me and for my personality type, if I wasn't all in and I didn't have that pressure of failure staring me in the face every single day, I know that it probably wouldn't have happened the way that it did. But that being said, I guarantee you there's other ways.
Yeah, that's a really personal question, and it's very dependent on what your circumstances are. A lot of the approach that most people take is like, well, how much runway do I have to actually like explore this path? And that's going to vary wildly for people. Some people, we also say, it's not wrong if you want to just do a side hustle or a lifestyle business or something, and you make a little bit more money on the side. There's no shame in that. But you do need to take some time to understand what your goal is. Like, I would ask you, like, is your goal eventually to run your own business? Or have you really kind of thought about that yet?
I haven't thought about it fully, to be honest.
Yeah. So you need to kind of do a little inflection on that piece. But it's a great question. And don't think that just because we did it a certain way means we always disclaim.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, and you don't have to do it the same way. So, yeah. Did you have a question next to him? Yeah.
Can I kind of add to this whole topic?
Sure, please.
Kind of like on the other flip side of this coin. So 3D printing is a hobby of mine that I've kind of like monetized through YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, 3DPrintOS. Hey, Andrew. So I have another business that I run as a web development company or web design company, and I love it. That's my all-time passion.
I like
but
this
I happen
guy.
to really also enjoy 3D printing and making videos. So it all kind of comes together and doing projects. So I do make a little bit of money off the YouTube stuff, but it still isn't like my first, thing. So it's all personal. I might have confused them a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean that's an incredible, like kind of mashup, if you will, where you found something that you had a passion about, but then you could like turn it into something more. And I think that's kind of what we're all talking about here is like how can you take these things that you are passionate about or you have interest in, and how can you turn them into something that's just more than maybe a hobby, and how can you connect all of these other pieces?
Yeah, that's great. And I like to say I live like different evolutions or different seasons, or like right now I'm much more like consulting heavy events and that, but like I've done the product, I dabble in content, but I would not, I work with a ton of content creators. I don't think I could do that fully, but that's the maker in me too. It's like there's a lot of, and if you're making a little money and you're stringing a couple of, sometimes it's just about stringing bass hits together, right? So you don't need to do the same thing all the time, and if you want to keep yourself free and easy to move around, that may be a good way to go about it. Any other last minute questions, thoughts, comments? Yeah, right here, Jerry.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
It's a little different, but something that bothers me a lot is pricing when you're starting out. So I started.
You're going to hit us with the pricing question with like 2 minutes left? Jeez.
Yeah, here we go.
Well, I started I have 2 clubs now, and when I started my first club for people to download models, I put my pricing at the minimum.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm undervaluing it, and I'm like, but I'm terrified to raise that price, and I don't know what kind of kickback or understanding I'm going to feel, so I don't know what your input on that would be.
I mean, this speaks to me very well, because when I first launched Repbox, I completely underpriced that thing. I didn't think anybody was going to pay more than $100 for it. I was just like wrong in every fashion, and then it feels really hard to raise prices on people. So what I did was I don't know if it's proper to say, but like the Chinese menu or like I did add-ons and upgrades and stuff like that, and I added higher margin options that supported the thing. So I think there's a lot of strategies. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name earlier. Jill, to Jill's point too, like it's okay to oftentimes start by, like, we're just building community here. So there is value even if you're not making a ton of money in that you're building a name and a reputation and a following. That's not bad. And the beauty is, you can layer, there are new tiers that you can add to your club, so you can still grandfather in people. I know you wish, like, I'd love to upgrade, so maybe there's a way that you can coax people into getting to like another tier, and then you can kind of like phase that out as you have time. So I don't think what you did is bad at all. Like we're saying, it's about getting started, it's about building a reputation, and that's good.
I think to add to that, Don't be afraid to just say, we've got to make the change. Most people are terrified of that, and sometimes you literally just have to, because otherwise it's unsustainable. And then you're going to keep going on and on and on, and then eventually you're going to find yourself in a problem. And it's like, well, I can't keep doing this. I'm burnt out. It's not working. Everything else.
Be honest that you're doing this for you, not for them, right? So your intentions, okay? And then anybody, especially in these club-centric things, like most people are there because they want to support you and what you do, right? And so you will get this man a mic.
Thanks very much. I think this has happened for a few people that I know in the 3D printing community, where they've priced low, especially on like their Patreon and stuff like that. Once you've built your community will follow you. You might lose. Say you hike your. Say the prices have to go up 15%, 20%. You raise your prices 20%. You might lose 5% of your people who go, well, I can't do that anymore. But you, as a net, we're talking business here. As a net profit, you've still won. Because the community who already follow you, already think that your stuff is worth it, will stay with you. And the people who don't are going to be far less than the margins you make from bringing up your price. Not higher, but to where you feel they should be in the first place. Because you're not it's not about gouging people out of money, it's about bringing it up to making it sustainable. And the people who follow you and who enjoy your work will follow you into that.
That's incredible. He's spot on. That's incredibly well said. We've got to wrap. We're out of time. But we're going to hang around. I'll be down wandering around. We'll hang out here for a little bit after if you guys want to just chat, say hi. We'd love having you. Thank you guys for coming out and interacting with us. We appreciate you all. Enjoy the rest of the show.